Hey, RetconRaider here, and welcome back to Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. As today, we explore the Exsellsior prophecy, which honestly sounds a lot more dramatic than I guess it really is. Though, pirates to kill, planets to scan. Certainly not a bad start. That said, let's start by clearing the hostiles. Oh, and top off real quick. And here we go. Valchen class frigate. Enemies immediately on the offensive. Oh wow, look at that. It's a one-on-one space battle. Okay, well this should be relatively trivial. One-on-one, we'll have a much easier time outmaneuvering this guy. Let's hook left, push past. Nice, nice. Hull at just over 75. Reinforce starboard, just in case they have rear guns. Oh, right. There go their torps. And they were distracted by our salvo. Perfect. Enemy hull at about 2/3. Enemy positioning is actually slightly awkward. Yeah, we'll just focus on distance this round. They're going to come around, drop new torps. Hopefully they'll be distracted by our own salvo. Here they come. Nice. Though I will say that was a tighter turn than I was expecting.
An opportunity to exploit.
Nice. Enemy panicking. Let's push that salvo off. Oof, that's awkward. And reposition. Alright, you gonna come at us, or are you gonna turn away? Oh, okay. Alright, okay. We'll come up behind. Yeah, try to bait their torpedoes with our own. Oh, good. Warp rotates recharged. We're fine. Enemy hull at 1/3. You know what? We'll risk the torps. Oh gosh. Yeah, that's fair. I'd rather take some incidental damage than let these guys get away. Though at this point, I think we're good. Really? Come on, man. Starting to feel like a bully here.
I hear their dying pleas in the void.
Cool. Thanks for that, Adira. Oh, wow. Quite a spike on our scrap all of a sudden. We'll do a couple of quick hull bumps. And level up. 2 new crew abilities. Let's see here. Shield Pulse. Too risky. We'll keep this simple, I think. We'll just go with a couple of mobility powers. Generally speaking, the whole ship minigame is about outmaneuvering your foes. So, yeah, we'll grab new heading, and we'll grab strafe. Though I will say, shallow jump was also very tempting. The only reason I didn't prioritize it is because, obviously, we make heavy use of warp wave. Right. There's our leveling tutorial. And top off hull. And back to exploring. Let's see what we've got. $5 Promethium, sure. I'd say that's worth an Extractium. Burning World, no resources. One stack fuel. And point of interest, flood victims. It appears that a large void ship recently dumped a huge load of junk and faulty parts from orbit. The debris that did not burn up in the atmosphere is now blocking the flow of a mighty river. This dam is causing the river to overflow, flooding the nearby valley. A herd of large hoofed rodents has gathered along the riverbanks. If the animals lose their usual habitat, they are doomed. Well, that's no good. Let's see if we can maybe make things slightly more Capy-bearable for them. It takes many planetary turns and hundreds of crew members to remove the heap of trash and unclog the river, letting the waters flow freely once more. The rodents run back to their pastures without so much as a backward glance at the people who saved them. You know what? That's fair. That is fair. Though I am curious if that eccentric animal lover rumor will actually get any sort of payoff. Never really came up again back in Alpha. It was just kind of a ha-ha funny. Okay, so let's try to clear this whole cluster before we head for Dargonis. We'll head for Agathis, and then that should hopefully kind of loop around to the other two.
Lord Captain, I hasten to report the disturbing news brought to me by the machine spirits of the ship. The matter is extremely delicate and concerns Lady Cassia. You see, since her first day aboard, her presence has been a disturbance to the crew's way of life. If you'll allow, I have prepared a detailed report.
Of course, Vigdis. What seems to be the problem?
The first incident occurred immediately after our departure from Urak 5. The Lady Navigator chastened one of the ship's runners, after which he went to his living quarters, killed his family, and then shot himself. The second incident was noted while traversing the warp. The Lady Navigator gave the pilots the wrong instructions, and the void ship was thrown off course. For a matter of minutes, but this was enough for the forces of the Immaterium to anger the machine spirits enough for them to start a fire in the service bay. After that, officers living near the Lady Navigator's quarters began to express extreme emotions. Hysteria, apathy, euphoria, rage. This is quite detrimental to crew morale and performance. The last incident was recorded on Footfall. Around 100 living birds were delivered on board during our stay on Footfall. Each bird cost a hefty sum, but I have failed to discover their purpose and subsequent fate. I was also told about a conflict between the Lady Navigator and the Seneschal, alas with no details. If you like, you can ask Master Wersurian directly. Things are even worse with Jay Haydari. I intercepted a Voxcast in which she promised she would, and I quote, end that Kasha if she ever saw her again. If I may, Lord Captain, the Lady Navigator's state of mind worries me. She is self-contained and does not mesh with the crew at all, which is why everyone avoids her. Even senior officers can be superstitious. I fear that only you are in a position to talk to her on equal footing and improve the situation. For the sake of the crew's safety, and that of Lady Cassia herself.
Indeed. And yes, perfect. It does go on a loop. Let's get a quick peek at Agathis. Ooh. Quite a few notable points of interest here. But first, sounds like we've got to navigate some awkward social situations. Let's see what's going on with Cassia. Though, I mean, it's pretty obvious. She's a very sheltered and socially awkward introvert with violently powerful empathic abilities. Oh, and Abby's right here. We'll start with him.
Lord Captain.
Abelard greets you with customary courtesy, but makes sure to scan you from head to toe with his scrutinizing gaze. Abby, I heard you and Lady Cassia had some sort of conflict. Is there anything I should know?
And who brought this piece of news to you, I wonder? Then again, I have nothing to hide from you. Of late, the helmsmen have been going off course with increasing frequency, and the reports are full of contradicting accounts. The problem continued, even after several demotions were handed out, so I took it upon myself to investigate. I was astonished to learn that our Lady Navigator has been amending entries in the ship's log, and the officers have been keeping silent on her orders. I immediately demanded an end to the outrageous conduct, and I reprimanded Lady Cassia in front of the officers. She greeted my words with silence, and then quickly departed. I should not have acted thus. I never even found out what drove her to do it.
Well, that just sounds like a misunderstanding, but I'll look into it. Thanks, Abby.
Lord Captain.
Abelard gives you a regulation salute. And let's go chat up Jay. Oh, they're talking about the ghost sightings Vigdis mentioned earlier. Jay?
May the Exalted One protect you. Have you grown bored without our little talk, Shireen?
Jay flashes you a welcoming smile, rolling a coin across the knuckles of her augmented fingers. Jay, I heard there are some tensions between you and Lady Cassia. That you even threatened to kill her? I do hope you realize just how vital a navigator is on a void ship like this one.
So, Vigdis is snooping in on my Vox line. I wasn't threatening your navigator. I didn't even think about it. I was just relaxing in the good company of fragrant Amasak, sweet-scented Laho, and a handful of new friends from the upper decks. And right in the middle of the fun, the Lady Navigator swoops in and starts jabbering about how her head is about to split from the cacophony of colors coming from our cabin.
Nice alliteration. Continue.
Long story short, Shireen, I had the misfortune of getting a taste of what your officers have been going on about. They say when the Arcelio girl becomes upset, everyone in the vicinity loses their minds and is overtaken by Agi. And it hurt like anything. I can only remember everyone huddling in a corner, wailing like klaxons. As for Cassia, I think Cassia was flustered by the state of our clothes, which were very meager back then, as you understand. Before I could get my bearings, the poor thing was gone. The whole situation was awkward. As for the threats, they were addressed to one of the girls I'd been foolish enough to invite to our little party. That Casa used the confusion to pilfer a full pouch of Laho from under my nose.
I see. So, yeah, just Cass being a violently empathic introvert. All right, Jay, don't worry about it all. I'll take care of it.
Oh, I have no doubt you will.
Jay laughs and bids you a farewell with a wink. Oh, let's swing by Vigdis real quick. When you approach, Vigdis pulls away from fine-tuning another box, then bows her head.
Lord Captain, the ship informed me of our imminent meeting.
I'll bet. I don't suppose it's informed you of anything else.
Forgive me, Lord Captain. I have no information that would be of interest to you at this moment.
Understood. Had to check. I'm not actually sure if she gets new rumors. It was just kind of a one-time thing back in Alpha. Your lordship?
Words cannot describe how boring the bridge is without our stimulating conversations.
Cassia offers a reserved smile, then waves at you in greeting. Cass, I hesitate to bring it up, but I've heard some rather troubling reports about tensions between you and other members of the crew. Panic flashes in her ruby-red eyes, and your heart starts beating a little faster, while your hands go cold.
Not here. I'm begging you. Aren't noblemen supposed to discuss such things away from the servants?
Cassia says in an almost whisper. Right, of course. Please, this way to my quarters. We will discuss it in private.
Then lead the way, and I will answer all of your questions.
No voice acting. All right. What is it you wanted to talk about, Lord Captain? I have nothing to say to your unfounded accusations about my conflict with the crew. I cannot recall having had a single quarrel with any of your people, during my entire time aboard. You sure about that? I've heard quite a few reports to the contrary. Vigdis was telling me that things have gotten so bad Jay was threatening to kill you. Cassia's ruby eyes become round, and an unbidden flush suffuses her pale face with a rosy tint. I didn't. That is our private business. The issue was between me and Lady J. Lord Captain, please pay it no heed. We made our peace long ago. And I will have you know, no one threatened me. Your information is incorrect. Fair enough. It did seem like an overblown misunderstanding. But what about the runner, who you rebuked your first day on board? According to reports, both he and his family met a rather unfortunate end shortly afterwards. I haven't rebuked a single errand boy on this ship. Cassia ponders this for a moment. I think I remember. A kind young man with a shy smile and skillful fingers, with too much rotten ochre on his shoulders. I grew tired of the disgusting color, and advised him to lighten his burden by casting the weight off his shoulders. He did not come in the next day. Or ever again. Oh, dear. Yeah, there's those mediocre social skills combining with her empathic powers to create some very unfortunate results. You know, it is becoming unfortunately evident that your abilities are causing some difficulties on board. I already told you I cannot control my abilities. What else do you want from me? Will I be assigned a pariah chaperone? Or will you put me in suppressing shackles? No, nothing that dramatic. I mean, we actually did have an opportunity to suppress your powers when we first met, and we very deliberately chose not to. But we do clearly need to figure something out. What about the unauthorized changes you've been making to the ship's logbooks? Apparently you tried to keep it a secret from Abby? I beg to differ. I read numerous books on Astronataris, and I can swear on House Orselio's honor that your officers are entering data in complete contravention of regulation. False terms, random distances between lines, spelling mistakes, and even the simplest of words. I have spent the last few cycles correcting the latest log entries, and I thought it would please Master Abelard, as he is so fond of order. And yet, the Seneschal did not appreciate my efforts, and for some reason called them an outrage, even though mere days before he had been swaddling me in warm, yellow words. I noticed all your people do this when they are expressing sympathy. I merely wanted to repay the Seneschal with the same courtesy. Perhaps he finds my friendliness off-putting? Right, so basic social awkwardness. That certainly does track, and at least no one actually got hurt there. What about the more recent warp transition? Vigdis mentioned you gave deliberately incorrect orders. Caused our ship to drift off course, and in the process, one of our service bays was destroyed. I saw something in the warp. Something vast, predatory, shimmering with indescribable colors. It came from nowhere and stared at the ship with hundreds of hungry eyes, right there in our path. I decided to change the course while it was still possible, but did not want to sow panic. Would it have been better to tell the crew we were heading straight into a monster's gaping maw? I mean, I'm going to say probably, yes. It would be nice if they knew what was actually going on, but at the same time, I guess I can understand why you wouldn't. All right, Cassia. What about the birds you ordered brought on board during our last stop at Footfall? No one seems to know what they were actually for. Admittedly, I am at a loss myself. The day we arrived on Footfall, I sent a request to the ship's quartermaster and asked him to get me a songbird. But he never asked for clarification, and shortly before we left, I had countless numbers of cages delivered to me, all wrapped in bright red panic with flickering tints of fear. There was a bird in every one. I was so excited. I thought I would have 100 friends instead of just one. They were squeaking so piteously, I let the poor things out. I even fed them my breakfast and dinner. But the stupid birds would not stop chittering even after bedtime. They were dashing about the room, smacking me in the face with their wings, and defecating. I became angry, and suddenly they started pecking at each other's eyes and attacking me. Then I became afraid, and they fell over dead. I do not think I want to keep pets anymore.
Yeah, that's probably for the best. All right, Cassie, I think I've heard enough.
Will you share your thoughts with me?
Look, Cassie, you're a very kind person at heart, and you are trying. It's obvious that you do have some issues when it comes to social interactions with others, especially given your abilities. You know, it wasn't too long ago I actually had to rebuild my own social protocol framework. Maybe I could help you do something similar. Avoid these sorts of misunderstandings in the future.
That would be wonderful. My education on Urak 5 was cut short, but I had realized by then that the wisdom of books is a poor substitute for the wisdom of experience. Very well. Since we are done with this misunderstanding, I would like to change the subject. It would only be fair for me to ask a few questions of you now, wouldn't it?
Cassia hesitates and continues in a less confident tone.
Do not mistake me. I am not going to accuse you of anything. It's just that you are the most worthy interlocutor on the entire ship, and you are always so busy.
Of course, Lady Cassia. I can spare a few moments. What's on your mind?
I read a treatise by Pacis Demobius very recently, who claimed that subjects would never believe their new ruler was better than the old one, unless the old one had been a tyrant. No matter the circumstances, the low-born rabble became deluded about their prospects, and rebel in favor of their base desires. What do you make of that?
Oof, really, Cassie? Your go-to on casual conversation is politics? We really got to get you socially trained. But, since you asked... Ugh, pretty much every response here is pretty loaded. I would say that, while there are certainly activists amongst your average Imperial citizenry, for the most part, by and large, most people of the Imperium simply want stability. Whether inherently good or bad, there is value to maintaining the status quo, even when passing from one ruler to the next. That's not to say that changes can't be enacted, simply that they should be introduced gradually over time. As long as you can maintain that sense of stability, regardless of what else you might do, they'll have far less reason to turn on you.
Cassia thinks for a moment, and then smiles. Indeed, I was not wrong about your merits, or your ability to hold a conversation. I hope my second question does not confound you either. According to the 20 tomes penned by the preacher Ostic Istefan the Forgotten, mercy and cruelty go through the world, hand in hand, but people flock only to one pan of the scales. Would you rather inspire fear in your followers, or be magnanimous and choose awe?
More politalk, really? Alright, well, I mean, at least this one's a bit easier than the last. At least for a dedicated iconoclast. Oof, though it is tricky in that they're forcing us to use our own social skills.
Thank goodness we took calculated relations, otherwise we'd have zero chance on this. Though it is still unfortunate, because I'd actually go for the balanced response if not for the fact that it's 10% lower than our other options. I'd say I generally prefer lenience and restraint. Fear and intimidation have their place, but they're much more difficult to pivot away from, if those results aren't the ones desired. And speaking of undesired results, you may be right. It seems that Cassia did not appreciate your words. We may not think alike, and I do not always understand your motives, and yet, may I be candid with you? Yes, of course, by all means. I must confess that sometimes I can hardly bear the burden the house has placed upon me. I feel I am not doing my best. Tell me how you, heir to a protectorate, can bear the responsibility for billions of lives day after day, and not stoop under all the weight. I mean, honestly, mostly by just not thinking about it. It's not really something that tends to come up much in our day-to-day adventures. But, you know, I guess if I were dealing with it in real life... Compartmentalization. I don't always make the right decisions, but I don't let the wrong ones get to me. While I do my best not to compromise my personal values, the important thing is that every decision I make with the dynasty's long-term success and prosperity in mind. Thank you for your patience, Valen. You are helping me to see the world in different colors. A novel experience for me. Our conversations hold a special place in my heart. Allow me to bid you farewell for now. I am heading back to my chambers to consider today's conversation. Well, that was awkward. Politics, obviously not one of my favored subjects. Classically something that you don't want to mix with your entertainment media. Though I suppose it is inherently difficult to separate those themes from the Warhammer 40k universe. I mean, let's be honest, there are a lot of things to enjoy in the setting, but at the same time, it is one that is deliberately crafted to ensure that there will always be violent conflict between the various factions. There are no real good guys in this universe, just bad guys to varying degrees. It's what makes a character like Valen so utterly out of place. And, you know, obviously I go into the game with that in mind. Whilst I do my best to bring some general peace and prosperity to my subjects, I have to imagine half these decisions we're making are ones that will ultimately be fruitless. Or just, you know, actively make things worse. This is the grimdark future, after all. And as advertised, there is naught but war. The rings. The giant rings on this planet's surface can be observed, even from orbit. It has emerged that this planet has a native species of giant insect similar to Terran ants. Just like ants, they sometimes form so-called death spirals, in which one creature follows another without realizing they're going in circles. These were the rings discovered by the ship's observers. The strange phenomenon that was originally suspected to be a sign of warp activity, or a nefarious Xenos structure, turned out to be a quirk of nature. And a tragic one at that. Interesting. You know, I think we could almost draw some parallels there between that and the circuitous nature of the Warhammer 40k setting. Very aptly timed. I appreciate that. Really kind of brings the conversation full circle. And a modest amount of provisions. I think we can skip those. We're doing okay on food thus far. The augurs have detected wreckage in the void ship's vicinity, but the exact nature of this wreckage remains unclear. The Augur crew reports that it has registered no evidence of a disaster that could have produced such debris. Some of the wreckage is made of plasteel, the rest is some unknown material. Studying the fragments further is nigh impossible due to severe corrosive damage. The non-metallic fragments also bear burn marks. Interesting. I wonder what that's all about. Let's get a gander at that void ship. Maybe that'll give us some much-needed context. Lord Captain, the augurs cannot determine who the ship we approached belongs to, but the telemetry clearly reveals it is an Imperium vessel. The hull is badly damaged, but there is air in some of the chambers, which means they are hermetically sealed. What are your orders concerning the discovery? I mean, obviously we're going to check it out. Ready a boarding party. I'd say this bears further investigation. Region: Cineris Maleficum. Location: Agathis Arcades. Material: extract from unofficial news sheet, windows on the bridge, distributed on the middle decks. Recorded by unknown. Note: the veracity of the recounted events is questionable. We who walk down the same passageways and the same bays day after day, we who are born, live, and die to the hum of the ship's machines. We forever hunger for the smallest glimpses of another life, and for a chance to see the heroes who tirelessly fight for us, and for the glory of the Imperium. So let's have a tale about the Lord Captain, by the will of the Emperor, the guardian and commander of every good and honest soul upon this void ship, and the time he boarded a vessel named the Fireborn. Like a dead whale cast ashore by the inexorable force of the swell, the wrecked vessel was a confronting sight for its unwitting visitors. Some bays still retained an atmosphere, but there was no life anywhere. The ship was dead, its machine spirits dissipated in the darkness of space. It was just the husk left, and the rogue trader's crew were to become scavengers, swarming the carcass of a fallen Leviathan. Our Lord Captain oversaw the expedition personally. He decided to train the penetrating gaze of the augur rays upon the damaged ship. The augur's keen eyes scanned the eerie vessel, identifying that the void ship was gravely damaged and was in the process of final erosion. There was very little time to explore it. 3 sectors seemed the least damaged: the bridge, the middle crew deck, and the service bay. After exchanging a series of trills and warbles in their mysterious and ancient language, the tech priests responsible for the augurs reported to the Lord Captain that they had glimpsed signs of valuable components in operation in the service bay. The Lord Captain's next step was to have Adira Talas spiel out a course. An unholy psyker she may be, but even souls as dark as hers submit to the Lord Captain's will. With hostile eyes upon her, Adira sank into a trance. When she resurfaced, she reported that the ship had been a victim of the warp. The bridge had suffered worst of all. It was the section that provoked the greatest anxiety and trepidation in the psyker. The service bay was the least damaged section, though Adira spoke of it with no particular interest. The Lord Captain's next step was to turn his attention to the scout units awaiting instructions. The Lord Captain had to decide which of the 3 teams he would lead, and which 2 would be entrusted to their officers. Let here be known the names of those honest people who stood before our rogue trader in that moment. The taciturn and grave young Ho San, whose word was as firm as his handshake. Captain Vesti, whose jokes will be remembered by everyone on decks 3 to 5. Captain Matina, the senior officer of the 3rd Unit, known to many as Grey Matina. She had been leading units back when the current crop of scouts were snot-nosed kids. No one on decks was in any doubt that navigating inside the wrecked ship would be difficult. The units would be separated by kilometers of twisting metal, dead modules devoid of atmosphere, collapsed passageways, and hull breaches the size of a house. The only thing connecting the brave teams would be the delicate thread of a Vox link. And we, of course, will head for the bridge. The main problem spot highlighted by Adira. I think we can entrust our officers to the rest. The Lord Captain joined young Hosan and his unit, who were heading for the bridge. From here on, we will relate the events based on what we have learned from witnesses, the people who accompanied the Lord Captain on the tour of the dread ship. The shuttles started up one after another and dispersed, each heading for its selected target. An hour spent on cutting through the hull in the freezing vacuum of space, a fussy boarding, and then, finally, the rogue trader stepped onto the cold, dark deck of the dead ship. The light of the torches revealed a sign in the gloom. Fireborn. After a minute-long exchange with the Voxmaster, who quickly checked the archives, it was established that the dead vessel was that of Captain Nova Van Dane, registered at Kiava Gamaport. The last of our 3 missing ships. Every minute spent on board threatened to end in disaster. The ship's days, or even hours, of existence were numbered. From all sides came the sounds of distant crumblings. The floor underfoot trembled every now and then. The Lord Captain hurriedly moved deeper into the compartment, when he suddenly felt the slightest puff of air brush against his neck, followed by a soft sigh. Almost as if someone had leaned in close, opened their mouth to whisper a dark, tantalizing secret, and then fallen silent. The only thing was that the Lord Captain stood entirely alone. The Lord Captain summoned all of his willpower so as not to succumb to fear, for fear was the mind killer. Where simple mortals would already be trembling and weeping, the rogue traitor only gritted his teeth. Shrieks and moans could be heard close by. Others were gripped by the illusion too. Young Hosan, the unit captain, barked out orders. His team held back their comrades who had fallen victim to the uncanny terror, and who were struggling to break free and run deeper into the cursed ship. A few minutes passed, and the unit, though scared senseless, was ready to continue. Sound suddenly blared from the Vox, which was tuned to the second unit's frequency. The words sound muffled as though the person on the other end wasn't speaking directly into the Vox, but desperately pressing the transmit button while occupied with something else. Never seen anything like it. It's beautiful. Hold on, wait, is it moving? The words were cut off by a strangled wheeze, followed by static. Young Hosan listened to the transmission, and the final rasp with a surprisingly calm expression, then pressed the Vox button, and in a similarly calm voice, let loose a stream of florid swearing, which centered on casting aspersions on his interlocutor's intellectual capabilities. Turning to the rogue trader, he remarked, "Apologies, Lord Captain. Captain Vesti from the second unit is well known for his pranks." "Crap, the Lord Captain's with you?" comes Vesti's voice from the speakers, followed immediately by, "My sincere apologies, your lordship. I just wanted to spook the guys a little." Not really the best time for it, but we're certainly not going to improve things by changing command mid-mission. Captain Vesti, report. Captain Vesti reported that his unit's foray had so far proceeded without incident, mystical or otherwise. They had found no survivors from the ship's crew, or bodies for that matter. However, the unit had encountered a problem. The passage leading to the deck section with the arsenal and storage depot was seriously damaged, especially the power cables. Proceeding further could be dangerous. But after consulting his officers, the Lord Captain issued new orders for Vesti's unit. Vesti's unit headed off to carry out their orders, while the rogue trader and his team continued on. After spending several hours wandering down the dead passageways, young Hosan's unit and the rogue trader reached the bridge of the Fireborn. The oppressive feeling had not dissipated. It was as though the bulkheads of the ship were steeped in the terror and pain of the people who had vanished without a trace from those decks. On their way there, the unit had found no signs of a struggle or bodies of the crew, and that served only to deepen their unease. After examining the bridge, the scout unit discovered that the captain's principal cogitator was still functional. The final log entry was identified, a damaged pict recording that no one in the unit was eager to view. Proximity to the cogitator alone was unsettling enough, and with each passing second, remaining on the bridge was becoming more and more difficult. The Lord Captain took a risk and watched the recording. The recording contained a message from Captain Nova Van Dane. It was almost impossible to make anything out in the pict. Only the captain's hand gripping the edge of the table and flashes of iridescent light. The captain was speaking crisply, almost calmly, but there were also short, almost inaudible breaths. Exactly what the rogue trader's team had encountered when they had first boarded the ship. And it even seemed that those sounds were coming not from the recording, but from the gloom-drenched corners of the bridge itself.
Kiava Gamma has fallen. The Fireborn broke orbit under fire from an unknown enemy and left the system,
said Captain Van Dane on the recording with the tone of an officer reporting to her superiors.
We encountered pathological warp activity. The crew is reporting failures in the Geller field system. The ship is doomed. Whomever finds this recording, I ask you to hold a prayer service for our souls. I also ask you to take the family relics of the Van Dane line from Kiava Gamma. The relics are stored.
The captain then specified the location of her family vault and the access code. The recording ended. There was nothing left to do on the cursed deck. It was time to return to the shuttle. A message came in from the unit led by the seasoned, unflappable Gray Matina. The captain methodically reported on all of the service bay sections her team had already examined. They had found nothing of value. They had found no bodies. There had been no incidents, and the search was proceeding as normal. The unit was waiting for further instructions from the Lord Captain. After distilling the salient points from Gray Matina's exhaustive report, Valen listed the areas that warranted a more thorough search. After returning to the shuttle, Valen received reports about the Fireborn status. The tech priest who relentlessly pierced the wreckage with the augur's gaze insisted on curtailing the operation as soon as possible, fearing imminent destruction. There were also reports from the other two units. The second unit had succeeded in moving through the danger zone and had returned to the shuttle with a valuable payload taken from the dead ship's stores. Gray Matina's unit had explored the service bay without incident and, not wasting any time, had marked valuable components for later disassembly and transfer to the rogue trader's ship. Nice. Though at a glance here it does look like it's primarily just standard cargo. Though I mean a fair bit of it. Obviously stuff we might not have gotten otherwise. Plus XP, of course, always welcome. The units assembled at the shuttles, and the Lord Captain gave the final order of this grim expedition. To honor the memory of Captain Nova Van Dane and her crew, as per the captain's final request. The last request of the fallen captain had been fulfilled. The improvised funeral began with a brief military salute, and the rogue trader himself recited a prayer for the souls of the Fireborn. Just as any honest servant of the Emperor who has dedicated their life to voyaging through the darkness would honor their fellows and mourn their deaths. Time was up. The scouting party returned to their ship. with one last look at the Fireborn, the rogue trader gave the order to fire upon the dead vessel at range, for that which was born in fire should also perish in flames. And thus it ends. The Fireborn has been extinguished. And we've got a fair bit of cargo to show for it. Very nice. I'll have to manually transfer that over to our holds later. Plus, we also pulled these las guns, I suppose, but that's nothing all that notable. That's probably just trade fodder as well. 30% range weapon. Which also completes the sector. Which did, admittedly, end on a bit of a whimper. I mean, that was an interesting event, but at the same time, you know, obviously very tame as far as warp-lost ships go. But still, I think, a nice change of pace. You know, they can't all be nightmare fodder, I suppose. Sometimes atmospheric and unsettling is adequate. That's it. We'll hit the pause button for now. I'll take care of the usual off-screen bookkeeping. And we will pick up here next time, as the Cronus Expanse continues to lay bare its secrets, one sector at a time. See you then. Oh, and special thanks to the Raiders, the fine folks who help make these videos possible, including but not limited to Revenant, Alois, CrowkingLoR, Dragon Matrix 7, Drakiith, V23, EgonAlter, Exsellsior, Gottlieb, James Trimmier, Kazorm, Mark Giemza, Nathan Welch Jr., OverlordPherom, RandomPassrby, RobbyB, Tomasz Piątkowski, Triphoppenskip, and Valinrook. Thanks for your support, guys. That said, if you'd also like to help support the channel, then feel free to push the buttons that do the things. Trust me, it does make a difference. Or you could even check out the PayPal, the Patreon, the Nexus GG, or the YouTube memberships. Links are in the description.
And who brought this piece of news to you, I wonder?